Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. You guys know the drill. We are retired New York City police detectives and 9/11 World Trade Center first responders. If you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we're going to be talking to an ex-inmate, Ricardo Moore. Spent over a decade at the Marcy hub at Mid-State Correctional Facility. He's going to join us tonight. I've been talking with him to discuss this beatdown squad and how the prison system operates in New York State. He has 10 years of experience on all different levels, and he's going to talk to us tonight and give us answers to all our questions. And at the end of the live stream, or towards the second half, we're going to take questions from the audience, and we're going to also give an opportunity for people to call in to the show to ask our guests questions. So, Ed, how you doing tonight? I know we got a lot to talk about. Still no freaking arrests as it pertains to the murder of Robert Brooks. This is despicable. Ed, your thoughts?
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Again, like I said, since we're not familiar with this system, but I know for sure if something like this were to have occurred within New York City, I'd say a detention facility, and somebody managed to get to a phone and call 911 and approach me as if I responded and told me about this beatdown and showed me a video, I'd be looking for those corrections officer in that facility, and I'd be taking them out of there in handcuffs.
Yeah, it's something called a summary arrest. We've done it many times. And again, I said it on previous live streams. If we were responding to a call for an assault or shots fired and someone's dead, murdered in the street, and we now have a video that shows who did this, you're not gonna say, oh, well, we're gonna wait this out, we're gonna do an investigation. But this apparently is how it goes in New York State. Let's play this video so everyone has an idea of who our guest is coming on. This is going to be an interview from December of 2024. This all happened right around the time Robert Brooks was murdered at Marcy Correctional. So let's take a listen to this report. It's our guest. He is in this interview. Let's listen in.
A closer look at accountability in New York's prison system. A former inmate who successfully sued the state over abuse by corrections officers is sharing his story, shining a light on the role of qualified immunity in shielding officers from consequences. CBS 6's Brianna Sapardi tells us as this comes as the family of Robert Brooks is speaking out publicly for the first time.
His killing must be a catalyst for change. Justice must be served.
Robert Brooks' family breaking their silence, speaking publicly for the first time during a vigil outside Monroe County Jail.
They denied my damn son a second chance. They denied him the second chance to be the best him he was capable of being.
I want my condolences to go out not blankly to the family of Mr. Brooks, because when I watched him in agony, I could personally feel exactly what he was going through.
Ricardo Moore was a former inmate at Mid-State Correctional Facility, located right across the street from Marcy Correctional Facility.
The very same video that the country has seen on Mr. Brooks is the exact same behavior that we suffered, 33 of us, but it wasn't on tape.
He, along with 27 other inmates, successfully sued New York State after they were brutally attacked by corrections officers in 2016. This legal victory brought some closure, but not enough, as qualified immunity protects officers responsible from personal liability.
Qualified immunity tells these officers it doesn't matter what you do, even if that action is intentional, no one will come towards you and prosecute you civilly for your actions.
Section 24 of the corrections law, you can only sue the state. You cannot sue the individual officers.
If the judge sides with the inmates, then the New York taxpayers are on the hook for the mistakes of the corrections officers.
That is true.
If Mr. Brooks' family wants to sue, they can't sue the individual officers, they have to sue the state.
In state court, yes, they would have to bring it in federal court. It's because New York state law,
which we know they have brought a federal lawsuit, which is great. This is a video from December of 2024. But this attorney, what he said is accurate. They would have to bring the suit federally. And as we saw from the press conference, the attorneys that the Brooks family hired are suing on the federal level as well.
does not provide such a remedy.
Steck introduced a bill in the Assembly creating a process to sue officers and government officials in state court, but it failed to pass in the Senate.
So New York State is the sponge that's going to absorb that abuse. The taxpayers have to pay Mr. Brooks' family for what happened.
So there you have it. That's the video. Our guest, Robert Moore, Ricardo Moore, has a ton of experience as it pertains to the correction system. And I'm honored to have him here. And I just want you guys to know in the chat, the Brooks family will be watching this video. I talked with his cousin Eileen, and she may be watching live. They may watch on the replay, and various other members of the Brooks family. So please, I implore you guys to put hearts and prayers in the chat for justice, not only just for their family member, but for all victims of crime from the New York State correctional system. It's running rampant. So without further ado, Ricardo Moore, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking out your time, and we appreciate you joining us on Primetime with DutyRon and Ed Wallace.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
So I want you to quickly introduce yourself to the audience. We have a live audience, and they would just like to know, basically what you have done and what has happened with you as it pertains to New York State Department of Corrections.
Okay, again, my name is Ricardo Moore. I was housed at Midstate, which is right across the street from Marcy, for 10 years during a period of time in 2016. And before I really begin to talk about what happened with us, I just really want to say to the Brooks family and all of the Brooks supporters and everyone that knows him that his death is a very, very significant tragedy. But at the same time, it is a catalyst for change that is unavoidable at this point because of the fact that they actually murdered him. I feel a lot of remorse for the family. I'm sorry about that. But at the end of the day, I really feel that something good and something very powerful is going to come because of the mistake that they made in taking his life. During the time that I was at Midstate facility, we had an assault that involved 33 individuals. And to try to keep it kind of short, what happened was that the officer who was working that unit came in that day and indicated to myself and others that he was not feeling well. During my placement at the time of that house, I was the clerk for that officer. Each officer has a specific clerk, an inmate who will be in the actual office with him during all shifts. So we spent a lot of time together, and I got to know him over a period of time. He was a younger officer. He was not as experienced and seasoned as the beat up squad, which already existed at this facility when I came there. They were actually trying to recruit him into that, and he wasn't really feeling it. So at the day that he came in, he indicated, "I don't feel good. Everyone leave me alone." He went in the office and sat back in an office chair that had a 2x4 piece of block in it to keep the chair from flipping over. Obviously, he put his feet up on the desk and went to sleep and lost his balance. In between trying to catch his balance, he struck his face on the side of a metal filing cabinet, and he was leaking profusely all over. When that happened, a number of us ran actually into the bubble, which is something inmates never do. You don't run into the bubble with the officer, and they ran in to try to help him, to pick him up off the floor. The media has reported numerous times that when they ran in, Officer Call was unconscious. Officer Call was never unconscious at any point. He was sitting up talking to us. At that time, we suggested that we pull his pin. Each officer has a pin which is actually embedded in their radio. When that pin gets pulled out, the entire facility knows there's an issue in a certain location and a response team is sent. When we asked to pull that pin, Officer Call looked them and me in the face and said, "Listen, don't pull the pin." Now, I don't know any law enforcement officer in any part of New York State or any other state, if he's attacked by a criminal defendant, is going to say, "Listen, I don't want no help. Keep it going. I'm okay." He's not okay. Right. He's going to accept that help. Officer Call told us specifically, don't pull the pin. And when he looked at me and told me that, I knew exactly what he was saying. If you pull this pin, you're going to force me to make a decision that I don't want to have to make, but I'm going to have to make that. And that decision is going to be on the side of the guys in blue. This entire event would have never took place if Officer Call would have just sat up and said, listen, calm down. These guys didn't attack us. I fell. He chose not to do that because he has that alliance with the blue shirts, and those blue shirts will never defend an individual in green, even if they know it's not the truth. So unfortunately, a period of time, New York State had to actually investigate it. We all had to take polygraphs, and it was found that we didn't do anything to this officer except trying to help him. To this day, he has never admitted that he was not assaulted, you know. That night, no one went to sleep. Everyone was getting physically handled and dragged to different parts of the facility because Albany was on the way. These officers knew that, and they wanted to try to talk to us before Albany came. So individuals got beat up before they came near. Individuals got threatened. And on the 6th is when they actually came in at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was up early that morning doing laundry and doing my clerk duties. There was a school bus completely packed from the front to the back. Officers was hanging out the doors, racing towards my facility. I tried to run to each bed, waking individuals up, telling them they're coming through, because I kind of perceived that this was going to happen because there was no way that they was going to just let this go quietly. So that particular moment, when I was trying to wake everybody up, for some reason, everybody was running out to the day room, which is the larger area of the dorm, and me and a couple other people stayed back. Imagine 40 men squeezing through one doorway at the same time, and the minute that they run in, they're just attacking and assaulting everybody. It looked like the 300 Spartans from my position, just seeing all of these blue shirts and just stomping and kicking every individual in sight. And the problem with that is the first officer through the door made it through the door. As officers are coming through, everyone's getting reassaulted by everyone that's coming through the door. So that was kind of a striking event to me, because I never seen that many people get beat up at the same time all at once. Mid-state, that beat up squad is there. What you saw on TV is something that happens every single day. And that's something that I feel that the public really doesn't understand. People like myself that's been in there, to us, that's a normal occurrence. That happens every day. Officers enjoy knowing that people are watching because they want to instill that fear into other people. So this is such a learned behavior. Those individuals who did that to Mr. Brooks, they didn't just wake up one day and said, listen, let's go kill an inmate. They were doing that stuff for so long that it's become a learned behavior, to the point. That's why you seen that sergeant standing in front of Mr. Brooks like it was an ordinary day. Nothing's happened. He wasn't supervising. He was being entertained by the murder of Mr. Brooks. And nothing makes me more angry. I'm more angry at Mr. Brooks' situation than mine, because just to see the arrogance that these individuals have embedded, to me, it's just terrible.
Wow. And Ricardo, to hear that from you just solidifies what Ed and I were saying all along. Is as soon as we saw that video, it just seemed like it was everyday operation. It was business as usual. There was nobody going, oh, wait a minute, hold on, let's think about this. Hold on, let's stop. Nobody did that. Everybody just stood around blase like it was just another day. And for you to see that, it solidified.
The thing is, there is no individual who would be recruited to a beat up squad who's going to take that position. No officer is going to say stop. That's not the whole purpose of the beat up squad. The beat up squad is a select amount of seasoned individuals, and they're actually the response team every night. Every shift has a response team. These individuals specifically selected for that response team, and that response team, the primary thing is always use of force.
Yeah.
The use of force in New York State prison is the primary controlling factor for them doing what they're doing. These officers who did that to Mr. Brooks, they would not touch a fly on the street where they live at. They would not walk down the street of any city and attack anybody. But having that badge and having that power and having that position gives them an opportunity to actually go to work, to do something that they're not capable of doing their entire lives. They are cowards. You understand what I'm saying? So to be able to go and do that is just shocking. A couple of things that happened in our situation, the 33 of us, is that real quick, when individuals come from maximum facility, they can actually graduate to the point where there's being placed in a medium facility like I am. So medium doesn't just mean nice guys, it means individuals who might have committed murder or some serious offense, and because they've maintained a good behavior report over the years, they actually get their security level dropped to where I'm at. One of these individuals had life in prison. He was at Mid-State. And Sergeant O'Neill, who orchestrated the entire Midstate event, he pulled 2 of the dreadlocks out of this individual's hair that he'd been growing for 10 or 15 years. He took one of those dreadlocks and put it on his golf bag so that he could show it to the people in the public and all his friends as a souvenir. How do you take a souvenir of a piece of human hair that you snatched out of somebody's head and have the comfort to actually put it on your gym bag or your golf bag? You know, one of the individuals, we were given urinalysis, and the purpose of the urinalysis, Sergeant O'Neill took urinalysis from all of us, doped them up with K2, and then told me more. Listen, go and tell them that if they lay down and don't say anything, I'll take care of these tier 3 urinalysis reports, which is what you get for a dirty urine. People got dirty urines that never even did drugs in their life. They were there for other type of offenses, but these are the type of efforts that these people were putting just to cover up. Most of the action goes into the cover up.
I wanted to ask you, Ricardo, because I did read the affidavits and some of the court testimony that's available online. And in that assault that took place, and I wrote the dates down. It was July 3rd. It was the incident. It was a Sunday, July 3rd, 2016. Yes. And then Wednesday, because July 4th holiday came, they waited to do this beatdown until the 6th because the July 4th holiday was there. And that's just me thinking like a detective. But these guys who came in there, you said some 30 some odd corrections officers, did they have their identification on them? Did they come in like, hey, this is a standard search, looking for contraband, looking for things of that nature that aren't supposed to be in the facility? Did they come in there with a purpose, or did you guys not get any kind of notification of that? And I read also that 3 of the inmates out of the 28, or was it more than 28 that was in this lawsuit? 32 or 28?
There was a total of over 33, but for other reasons, some were eliminated. But in the dorm, there was like 40 to 50 people in the dorm.
But what I read, thank you for that clarification, Ricardo. But what I read is that 3 inmates were sexually assaulted. They redacted their names. They just used their initials, and they talked about shoving things in their rectums and flicking their penises. Like, and this was all in court. This is, we're not making this up. This was testified. So I want you to speak on that.
When this incident happened, the Correctional Association of New York State COPA, the very first thing they put on all the news channels was, these guys are criminals. They're lying. There's no way that none of us would have done anything like that. And they actually did it. So we had to wait for 8 years and be liars for 8 years just for the court to determine that these events did in fact happen. I can't imagine any person that would want to lie and say that a man pulled my pants down and stuck something in my rectum. That actually didn't happen. And they can redact it from wherever they redact it from, but they can't redact it from me. I know all these individuals. One of us right across the room getting this done as I'm laying on the floor looking at him. So you'll never be able to sit there and convince me or the 33 of us that it didn't happen. But that's the extreme nature of this specific event. Pulling individuals' pants down, stuffing. It was actually flashlights that they keep, little mag flashlights. They put a glove on it and stuck it up underneath them and told them, how does it feel to be helpless? Now, an important point that you made is that the assault happened on July 6th. Mr. Officer calls happened on July 3rd. OSI and New York State investigators came down on July 7th. And they didn't come for us. They came to let the facility know, listen, we checked out the story about Officer Cole, and the evidence doesn't show that these inmates did anything. We got polygraph reports, and we just come to let you know that that issue was cleared and these inmates are not responsible for that. At that time, the superintendent sat in front of these investigators and he didn't tell them they didn't do it. Well, we sure just beat up everybody for doing it yesterday. He refused to tell the investigators that the entire facility had came down and beat up and sexually sodomized 33 people. And that's one of the reasons that the superintendent was released, because he failed to provide that information. But can you imagine the shock that the superintendent felt when these investigators tell him, listen, they didn't do it. Yeah, but you already punished them for doing it. So that in itself was not good.
Yeah, and you know, I appreciate you being candid with us and speaking about this. And you and I have been talking for a couple of weeks now, and when I had initial conversations with you, I said, I do not want to hold anything back, but I don't want to talk about things that you might not want to talk about, because you, from your own admission, suffer from PTSD and stress over your incidents that happen here, not just this one, but just sitting in your cell and waiting for that door to open up and not knowing what's going to happen to you. The reason we're talking about this, folks, as it pertains to Robert Brooks, is that this is showing, and this is obviously this has happened before 2016. This didn't just start happening when this incident happened with Ricardo and the 28 or 30 inmates that were assaulted and some sexually assaulted. The reason we're bringing this up is just to show you that this is a culture that has been existent in the New York State Department of Corrections decades. Let me let that sink in to everyone in the chat and people who are watching. New York State, the governor of New York State, the attorney general, shame on you for allowing this to happen, because this is not unbeknownst to them. They have to know that this is going on. There is no way in hell that any of these people have zero clue about this. And I'm talking about the powers that be right up the line. And Ed, I'm going to let you, I know you got a lot to say here. And Ricardo, if you want to respond to that, I'll give you a chance to respond to that. But it's despicable when you look at this in the big picture here.
It's obvious. It should be obvious to the Attorney General's office, who represents the corrections officers in lawsuits filed by prisoners who've made complaints against assaults and by corrections officers in these facilities. If the same correctional officers' names keep popping up time and time again in different attacks, in different lawsuits, there has to be something to it, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Isn't that normally the case? Okay, I mean, yeah, I get it. I get it. A lot, they were convicted by a jury of their peers, and they were put in prison for committing crimes. I get that, 100%. But that doesn't mean that once they step through those gates and they're in this facility, that they're not humans anymore, and they lose all their rights. Their civil and constitutional rights.
Yeah, it's despicable. It's despicable. And then I wanted to mention too, Ricardo, before you respond, there is also, and I'm going to play after we continue this conversation, and we have Amazing Aunt who's going to come in and give us some great, some of her take from this, because she has a family member who's incarcerated in another state, and she talked about it on a live stream. So we're going to have her join us. But there's an organization called Correctional Association of New York that is an independent auditor of, New York State corrections, and they've been keeping tabs on New York State for some time, and they made a report in 2022 that outlined some of these very issues, and this is some time after 2016, and still nothing was done. Ricardo, your thoughts?
One of the things that really amazes me is when it's whether it's media or whether it's YouTube, the question that people are always asking is, why are they not in jail? Why they're not getting arrested? And the answer is very legally clear, but the average person does not have a legal interpretation of exactly what the rules are between New York State and a correctional facility. In New York City alone, there are at least 27 significant gangs that exist within New York City. We're not talking about upstate, we're talking about just in New York City. But in New York State, as New York State as a whole, the largest, most legally and financially supported gang that exists in the entire state of New York is the New York State Department of Corrections. These individuals have legal support. Gang members don't get legal support. They don't get the union to say, we'll pay your legal fees. They don't have qualified immunity promised to them by New York State. Before an officer even shows up to work the very first day, he has already been promised qualified immunity by the state of New York. The governor would not go on the news and say, listen, I didn't arrest these guys because they got qualified immunity. She's not going to tell you that. That would be completely embarrassing. And it goes against one of the main rules that New York State has, which is an employee. I don't care if you're a CO or anything related to New York State employee. A New York State employee will not engage in any conduct that will cause the public to question their trust. Does Mr. Brooks question our trust? Maybe just a little. So that's a very significant thing within New York State. The law is there, but if the public doesn't go look at the law, then that's not New York State fault, because they provide the law to you. Ignorance of the law is no excuse for not following or definitely not finding out about it. So I'm always motivated to tell people, look at the specific directives of New York State docs, because everything that goes on in prison is covered by a directive.
Ricardo,
Directive 40. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off, but explain to our audience what qualified immunity is.
What qualified immunity means is that every last employee of the state of New York, while they're engaging in the course of their duties, that means from 8 to 5, whatever your shift is, whatever happens during that day, if you engage in behavior that causes someone to be liable as an employee, you're exempt from being sued civilly for your actions. Okay. That means that you don't have to go to court. The charges are not against you. The state of New York is the one who is taking the hit for that. Now, embarrassingly, New York State is not taking a hit, because New York State is taking that money out your taxpayer money every day that you go to work. So in essence, taxpayers are paying for murdering Robert Brooks when the taxpayers didn't do anything to Robert Brooks, but they are the ones that have to absorb that cost. And I think that is, of everything else, I think that is the most insensitive thing that could happen. So they have qualified immunity on one end. On the second end, what the public doesn't know is that the New York State COPA, the correctional officers, have a union where they have what's called a collective bargaining agreement. Now, every word of that sounds fishy to me, but a collective bargaining agreement, which means all of us having a bargaining agreement with the state of New York that says, if we do something like we just did to Mr. Brooks, you can't arrest us. You can't do anything to us until we go through the process of getting a notice of discipline. That takes 14 days. Then they get an arbitrator. That takes another 14 days. Then a decision has to be made. That takes another 14 days. So the days that we've been sitting wondering what's going on, these are normal procedures of that union to give these officers time to make sure they get their back pay, some of them not getting back pay. It's a whole collective bargaining agreement, and that's not explained to all the public that's saying why they're not arrested. This is the reason why they're not arrested. So I would encourage people to find out these facts, and then you have something, a leverage to argue with the governor, because the governor should have been embarrassed to even come on TV and say, they should be fired. You can be fired from McDonald's for showing up late, stealing, sleeping on the job. If you murder somebody at McDonald's, you don't get fired. You go to jail on site. You know what I'm saying? So for her to say, they're going to be fired. Yeah, ma'am, that's supposed to be expected.
What's insane about this qualified immunity is that there's no clause in there. And this clause, I believe, should be in there. If you commit a crime in the course of your duties, look, we swear on an oath to uphold the laws of the land, right? The Constitution of the United States. But if we take somebody's life and commit a crime while you're being employed by the New York State correction system, then qualified immunity should be out the fucking window. Excuse my language, people. It should be out the goddamn window. And in this case, it's not. And that's just what's mind-blowing about this, is that these guys should be hogtied, shackled, and dragged in. All of them should be locked up, including the nurses that stood by there. Now, I'm not saying that the nurses should be locked up for murder, but they should definitely be facing charges for failure to make the notifications. These people shouldn't be spending Christmas with their families, New Year's Eve, going out shopping. From what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but people from up in that area have sent me messages that New York State troopers are parked in front of the houses of this long, dirty laundry list of scumbags that murdered this poor man, Robert Brooks. They're outside of his house providing protection. Ricardo, I know you got a lot to say.
But don't you think they need protection? I mean, don't you think there's a reason why those troopers have to be out there? Because people are not going for that. I really don't understand how Mr. Brooks died and no one's in jail, but Luigi came to New York, killed a man on video, and the entire world looked for Luigi. Brought him back, and the mayor of New York City did a little dance beside him as he was in custody. And the entire world looked for him. These guys are at home and no one's looking for them because they don't have to, because they know exactly where they're at. They're home celebrating Christmas and New Year's after they murdered a person. Why are the murderers different?
And they're talking about taking the guns away from them because they're a danger to themselves and others. What kind of bull crap is that? Listen, I want to play this just to give us a break here. I'm going to play this hands-on prison. Marcy is designated as a hands-on prison. It's well known. And I also want to come back and get your response to this. Did any, and don't answer it now, did any of the correction officers, that busload and the people who beat the inmates the day of the incident, get fired? And we'll come back to you for your answer on that.
Okay.
On prison. That's what inmates say. The guards called Marcy Correctional Facility, according to a report from a Watchdog group released just a few months before the violent death of Robert Brooks. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Luke Radel. 1 in 5. That's how many prison inmates in Marcy say they haven't seen or been subjected to abuse by staff. No, I didn't misspeak just now. 20% of inmates say they have not seen or been subjected to staff abuse there, meaning 4 of every 5 inmates has seen or been subjected to staff abuse, whether it's physical, verbal, or sexual. That's according to a 62-page report by a watchdog group, Correctional Association of New York. I have the full thing right here, and going through its interviews with over 100 Marcy inmates is chilling, especially just a day after we saw this video from body cameras as inmate Robert Brooks was beaten by officers inside a medical exam room on the night of December 9th. He succumbed to his injuries and went hospital hours later. So let's take a look at this report and its findings. On page 3, quote, incarcerated people reported rampant abuse by staff, including physical assaults and observations on a retaliatory environment. On page 22, the survey question answered by 64 Marcy inmates, quote, have you seen or personally been subjected to verbal, physical, or sexual abuse by staff at this prison? 51 inmates say yes, only 13 say no. Numbers that stark are hard to wrap your head around and almost hard to believe. Jennifer Schaaf, who's the executive director of the group that published this study months before this most recent beating of Robert Brooks, says potential skeptics of the data need to understand that what happened to Brooks is not an isolated incident.
Well, I think that now we have in living color the video evidence of the kind of brutality that people have described to us. We've interviewed thousands of people over the past couple of years alone, and an unacceptable number of people who are incarcerated in New York State prisons have experienced or witnessed brutality that approaches the level that we're seeing in this video. And so I think that the skeptics might go back, read our report with fresh eyes now that they've seen this gruesome depiction of contempt for another human being's life.
In interviews with more than 100 inmates in Marcy conducted in October of 2022, the Watchdog group found higher instance of staff abuse at Marcy compared to other facilities, state prisons that they had visited recently. Inmates, quote, detailed experiencing or witnessing a range of abusive behaviors by staff, such as physical assaults in locations where cameras are absent, including between the gates, in vans, and in showers. They also described staff engaging in verbal harassment and pepper spray. One individual described, quote, physical abuse is rampant. The CO told me that when I got here, this is a, quote, hands-on facility. We're going to put hands on you if we don't like what you're doing. Another stated, quote, vibes in this jail with staff are off. They brag and intimidate us about the number of people they've beat or sprayed. Here's more from Schaaf on this.
And so hands-on here doesn't mean very engaged in a positive way. It means hands-on, like we will put our hands on you, we will beat you up. And we've heard and seen in the media this characterization of a beat-up squad, this security squad that carries out allegedly many of the assaults at the facility.
And one more note on this report and its findings, quote, Canny monitors observed a pervasive culture of fear and retaliation at Marcy. On the second day of Kenny's visits, they went for 2 days in October of 2022. Several incarcerated individuals confided in Canny monitors that staff had walked through the housing units the night prior, announcing threats of physical harm in retaliation for speaking with Canny.
Unfreaking believable. Ricardo, that report, again, is not new. This is old. This was from 2024, late in the year, right after the murder of Robert Brooks happened. The warden at your facility and those correction officers, any fired or removed?
The county of wherever this hub is at, I'm in Albany, but I don't remember the county. The county arrested Sergeant Daniel O'Neill, and he was released. And he is the only individual who was actually charged immediately for the actions of that. The deputy superintendent of security was promoted and given a superintendent position at a maximum facility. The deputy superintendent of programs, Deb Jocelyn, was the only executive person who stood up in court and told the truth about her perception of what was going on. She indicated that she thought it was too much, that they destroyed too much. So she stood up. She still was given a notice of discipline for failure to lead. The Captain Adamak, disciplined for failure to lead. Captain Goppert, failure to lead. And there were a number of individuals who were disciplined in some type of way because of the falsification of records, the urinalysis reports, and everything else that went on. But you're still not getting the level of punishment that we're sitting here saying that they deserve. And they'll never get that. There are over 47 prisons in New York State, and New York State spends a lot of money in these seasoned officers. You don't want to just fire them. So their answer is, okay, we just send them to another facility. Send them to another facility. No one knows them over here. And these guys get rotated around the state of New York, and all they doing is essentially just linking up with new beat up squads at the new facility. So it's very seldom. The only time that I've actually participated in an officer getting fired or seen him getting fired is in cases of sex, where an officer has slept with an inmate. I don't care if you're 40 years old, and the public needs to know this. I don't care if your loved one is 35, 40 years old. If they sleep with a female officer or vice versa, that inmate does not have the legal consent to engage in sex. So that officer is immediately charged with rape, and they can be placed on the sexual offender list for having sex with that individual, because that individual is not, he doesn't have the legal authority to say, yes, let's have sex.
Consent. Yes. Yeah.
That's the only time that I've actually seen officers get immediately arrested and removed. But other than that, for the use of force, it's just such a long process that I'm trying to deny. Like, well, it took 8 years for the court to say, yes, it actually happened, and now you have to pay. So
this just mind blowing, because there was a sexual assault on 3 of the inmates listed in this lawsuit. Listen, our good friend, Amazing Ant's been waiting for 37 minutes. She's probably pissed off at me. But I have to get her in. She has, again, she's a great friend of the show. She's a personal friend of mine. We work together in the police department, the NYPD. Sergeant Amazing Ant, thank you for being patient and hanging out. I appreciate you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hi,
Good
Mr.
evening.
O'More. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, ma'am.
It's
Now,
even
Sarge.
nicer that you're a Yankee fan.
I am.
Well, I beg to differ. I saw him with the Mets
Okay,
hat on.
I said
and
that I'm
he was-
I had a Mets hat on the last time. You got
I don't know what's going on. But it's all good.
nice.
Sarge,
Yes,
you've
Ron.
been listening to our conversation this whole time. I want to go to you for your thoughts as it pertains to Ricardo Moore, and also tying into the murder of Robert Brooks.
Yeah, so I don't have my glasses on, but I took a few notes when Mr. O'More was speaking, and he literally took the words out of my mouth, because I did a little bit of research on some of these things you all mentioned. So I'm glad that I listened before I hopped on. And Ricardo, if you don't mind me saying Ricardo, you hit the nail on the head with when you mentioned the sexual assaults. The Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA, was passed because there were over nationally 180,000 inmates sexually abused. The rates went up from 2011 to 2015. So this is an old study. They're higher now, and I'm going to get more info on that. But what you said about consent, all physical contact, especially sexual, an inmate cannot consent to. And I knew that for sexual, but the all physical contact, when I researched this this Elimination Act, the PREA, and I'm being sensitive to our community that's watching, and for anyone who has any trauma related to this topic, I will not use that word, the R word, but I am going to highlight that you are 1,000% correct, Ricardo. And you can teach at the training academy, because I taught at the NYPD Police Academy some life-saving skills, and I'm a New York State EMT. And the reason why this interests me in terms of the legalities, the consent, physical consent, even touching an inmate, their wrist. A friend of mine, she was a CO in California in a state prison, and an inmate touched her wrist when she was handling the inmate, and they immediately got separated. She didn't ask for any contact, but just the optics, right? Because it looks it's illegal. So she said just the act of that. It ends up that that inmate was hooking up with another female inmate, and he was just testing just to see if she would bite for that. So anyway, to your point, for everyone in the room and in the community, physical contact, an inmate cannot consent because a CO has a power of authority, a higher rank. There's an intimidation factor just in the presence of having their freedoms that inmates do not have in terms of going in and out to the public sector. So that already is disturbing, because for the obvious reasons with Mr. Brooks, not only was he violated on every level of human rights and civil rights. I'm a New York State EMT. And if I had to come to treat him, and I've been an EMT since '98, so I'm a little OG EMT. If I had to treat him, I'm a female, he's a male. I could treat him, but we always have someone else in the room, especially if there's any personal parts that have to be revealed, or if I have to remove his underwear, I have to have a witness there, right? As an EMT. So I can't wrap my head around the medical personnel in the room, and I have to address that, not taking any action medically. But then I'm also a sergeant, Ricardo, and I was a police officer where DutyRon was, and also Detective Wallace in Brooklyn, East New York, Brownsville. Everyone knows these communities, and the South Bronx. So we had a lot of violent felons, and we had a lot of sexual crimes that would happen. I cannot act out on those people, especially in custody, just because they did a crime to someone else. So when you were telling your story, I'm so glad that you are educated in the rights part, right, of your incarceration, because a lot of people aren't. Unfortunately, that's why they tolerate. So my relative, just last week I shared, I saw my relative on a video call last week, and I had a Christmas tree up until yesterday. And I positioned it so that he can see the lights and have some positive vibes during Christmas. The CEO doesn't know who I am. I have half my face on the screen because of privacy and what I do for a living. And they literally yanked him off, and they were laughing at him, and they touched him with no provocation. He's on the phone with me 45 seconds. They yanked him off when they saw the Christmas tree, and they were roasting him and making fun of him. I just spoke to him Sunday, and I said, what happened? Which was a rookie question for me to ask, because he's not going to tell me on a recorded line. So fast forward, I spoke to a chaplain friend of mine who's going to go see him hopefully within the next week to make contact so I can get a little bit more. But I told him, call your lawyer. And he doesn't even want to do that because he has a court date coming up in February, and he doesn't want to jeopardize his release. So I witnessed for myself the fear in his eyes. He's a nonviolent felon, but he had this fear in his eyes that he was too scared to even ask for help, even to me when I said, are you okay?
Right.
Thank you for listening, everyone. That was the longest I shared, so thank you.
That what you're saying is very important, because, ma'am, the average person in the world who's coming to see their loved one, they don't know anything about what you're talking about. And my thing is, the more information that the public has about the specific rules which apply to their loved one, the more of that you know, the more defense that you have, the more tools that you have to make a complaint. And a lot of these complaints are time sensitive, so you have to actually file a complaint on something that happened within a legal specific period of time. Directive 4944, ma'am, from DOCS is the use of force. And in that use of force, Section 7 specifically states that all employees have a duty to intervene. What that means is when all those guys were standing there watching Mr. Brooks' death life get taken from him, they had a duty to step up at any moment and say, listen, this is enough. Stop, 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 stop. Like that is a directive policy that all of them know. They learned this at the academy. How do you just automatically just close out that duty to intervene and stand there and watch this person die? Because at the end of the day, when the heat comes, they're going to start telling on each other just like a group of criminals would. When it comes to their life and losing their pension and losing the property, all of them are going to turn around and now they want to start telling when you should have been intervening in the first place. So
that's what happened with George Floyd. Do you remember? Everyone knows George Floyd. The federal lawsuit, the civil rights, those officers were all federally prosecuted because of their complacency and inaction. And that's even just as egregious as a homicide.
Right.
Well, the one thing about the Brooks family, I'm actually glad that someone was smart enough to go ahead and assign a federal case first. That didn't happen in our case, and I wish that it did. And I don't know that we're excluded from that at this point, but attacking the federal case first puts the responsibility on the officers first, because the feds are going to go straight to the officers. When you do that to New York State, you're expecting some taxpayers to pay it. And the thing is, if I do it federally, how do I know that these officers even have enough money to pay whatever the stipulation of that court is going to be? But it's not about the money. You want that officer to be held personally responsible for his actions. So I'm really glad that he took the action to do that.
Ed Wallace has something to chime in with.
Yes. New York State Penal Code 195.00, criminal statute of official misconduct. Okay. The offense occurs when a public servant, such as a police officer, judge, or government employee, uses their position to obtain personal benefit or to harm someone else. Okay. Specifically, the law states that a public servant is guilty of official misconduct when they commit an act related to their official duties, which constitutes an unauthorized exercise of their official functions or is a violation of their official duty with the intent to cause harm to another person.
Right.
Perfect. Bingo. New York State penal law, right, Ed? And it's right there for the courts. And they haven't done anything to these monsters who brutally murdered someone, and everyone in that room was culpable on every level.
Yeah.
Right. So if they stood by and didn't do what the law says they should have done, which was to stop the assault, stop the attack, and report it,
right,
official misconduct.
And render aid, they didn't even protect his life.
No.
Right. This case with me, the Mid-State assault really blew up on November 15, 2016, when the New York Times released this incredibly damaging story. No one really cared up until that specific day. On November 15, I was in a meeting with the IOC, and I just want to mention real briefly, if I can, Ed and Ron.
Yes.
Each facility has a IOC. That is an inmate liaison committee. That is a mandated 4 people. I don't care if there's 5,000 people in the prison. There are 4 inmates who are assigned to that IOC, and their specific job is to represent the entire population with incidents like this. Myself, I was an IOC chairman for like a year at Mid-State, and I had 3 other people underneath me. So for an entire year, all I'm doing is reporting incidents of sexual assault. This guy's in a box. This guy just got beat up. This person's girlfriend or wife came on a visit. You have no idea how women get violated on a visit when they come to visit their loved ones. Addressing those type things. That IOC is very important, because a lot of issues that families have right now, if the incarcerated person would address that to the IOC, and if they are just as strenuous as I was, then these are ways to bring these type incidents to the light. And once you bring them up, Albany's going to come down there right away and look into it. But someone has to initiate that complaint. And that is what the IOC is set up for in every facility. If there's someone watching, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
I had a question. How did you get to be the chairman of the IOC?
The only reason why I got sent to Mid-State, ma'am, Mid-State is one of 2 things. Mid-State is a level 1 sexual offender jail. Oneida prison closed, and when they did that, the sexual offenders were now mandated to go to Mid-State. So a majority of the individuals at Mid-State are in fact sexual offenders. Mid-State is also the only prison that exists in New York State that has a veterans dorm. Me being a veteran of the United States Army, I was allowed to go to Mid-State to be in the veterans dorm. I was in the veterans dorm for 2 months, only 2 months, and I witnessed an officer stuck his hands down an inmate's pants and grabbed his groin, squeezing it to bring him pain. I reported that to Albany, And the minute I did that, I was placed in a box, given 3 years solitary confinement. I had to fight all of that simply because I was attempting to report FRIA on an officer. So once I got all that stuff thrown out, as punishment, I was then thrown into this dorm where this assault happened.
Yeah. I want to ask you one thing here too. Once you came out with all the inmates and filed lawsuit, were you incarcerated when you filed this, or were you out on the street? And if you were incarcerated, was there any ramifications for that?
2 days after we were assaulted, I was in a dorm telling people we need to file suit. We need to file suit. Oh, Moore, you need to shut up. You need to lay down. You're the reason why we in this. So a lot of people didn't listen. The 33 people that eventually were successful in this case were the 33 people that listened. So I was actually inside the facility trying to send letters to our counsel outside to get all the paperwork signed for them to take the case. During that time, the officers were threatening us. We couldn't even go to the law library to get our paperwork notarized because they were trying to hinder us from doing that. I had to get in touch with Albany, just ask permission for us to get our forms notarized. I had to ask Albany to make sure that we were separated so that we wouldn't get further retaliation. So every step of the way, they was trying to fight us from even initiating the lawsuit.
Right.
What was your other question?
If there was any ramification, like did you have any type of pushback from the corrections officers? Did they catch wind of it? Was there any price to pay?
I want you to understand, sir, for the entire 10 years that I was in here, this is all I ever done the entire time I was in there. It would be easy to find someone who remembers Rico from such and such a dorm. So the entire time, my job was fighting officers and fighting the administration. I never had a problem with any type of inmates. It was always the officers. So every morning that I woke up was a morning that I might not wake up. An officer might actually pay an inmate to do something, to go to more. But the more that you do this and the more successful that you are in bringing attention to this, the less that they bother you. They now look at you as a threat and they don't want to touch you. So I've been doing this thing for 10 years, but coming on the street, this case here is so scary to me because I already mentioned to you how I was hit with a vehicle. And I hope you had that video to show. A random person just pulling up and striking me with a vehicle and almost killing me.
Right. You know, I'm hold that thought, because as you're saying that, I have the video up on my phone. I couldn't upload it to YouTube because YouTube said it was violent and they wouldn't allow me to play it. I tried to upload it and it got booted off the server. So I'm gonna play that video and I'm gonna have to see it. I'm gonna hold up my phone. I'm gonna go full screen with me for once during the stream.
Before you do that, let me just state that this is the type of retaliation that you can face just by trying to do the right thing, speaking up for a group of individuals. I'm in prison doing my own time, and I'm trying to defend individuals. And look at what Ron has for you. This is a possible retaliation for you trying to do something like that. If you can hear me, you'll see me here. That's my red truck that I still own, parked at the gas station. You'll see me now. I'm coming out of the store. Do you notice that there's a vehicle parked right in front of my truck, just waiting? I'm approaching my truck. He waits till I get right by my door, and you see what he does?
Wow. Yep.
Now, because of the military, the minute he stops, I'm thinking I need to get up because he's going to back over me. I'm not realizing that as I'm walking, I'm having a heart attack, and my collarbone is broken, my back is broken, and my heart is punctured. I come out the store and I fall to the ground, and the video cuts. This is police video, but they cut it because it was just that bad. This guy got out of his car. He came and walked and stood over me, and I could barely breathe, but I'm asking him, why did you do that? He had nothing to say. The minute the police came, he changed his demeanor and said, oh, guys, my sandal got caught under the pedal, and that's why I hit him. I couldn't stop the car. Does it look to you like his sandal got caught under his pedal? Wow. Does it look like he's panicking, trying to avoid me? I swear he aimed right for me. And I don't want to say his name, but I have reason to believe that he was related to some of the individuals that are involved as defendants in this case. I had reason to believe that at that time. I didn't really bring it up at the time because it was a conflict between the insurance company, his insurance company, or the act itself. If I had reason to prove that he did it, then I would have to attack his estate as opposed to getting the insurance company.
Now, was
So-
he ever arrested, this person?
No, sir. He told them that his sandal got caught under the pedal. They indicated to him that they looked at the video and they thought otherwise, and he had a heart attack and died that day.
Oh, my Lanta.
Oh my
So he,
Lanta.
so he hit me with that car, and he was dead within a week. And so what that means to me is I will not hesitate to defend any individual because I believe that God has me. And that may sound corny to somebody, but
No.
you look at that video and tell me that God did not have me. So I would take whatever action. I'm not afraid to defend on the behalf of anyone. And I do that on a daily basis here in Albany, New York. My birthday was on December 14th. I woke up in bed alone because the PTSD from this event, like I can't have people sleep with me because I wake up swinging off and whatever. But December 14th, I woke up and got a phone call about the decision of my case. About 4 hours later, I leave outside of my house and I go out to my truck, and there is a black Tahoe out there with tinted windows just parked there. I mean, I'm an ex-felon, so I'm always looking at the police, but I'm wondering why is this truck sitting there? They rolled right up to my truck, rolled the window down and said, wasn't you one of those individuals that is in the mid-state decision at the court? I'm like, yeah. He's like, didn't you get hit by a car about a year ago? And I'm like, yes. And he looked at me and said, and you still out here fucking talking? Like you ain't had enough? And they rolled their windows up and pulled off. And I would not be a man if I sat here and told you that did not intimidate me. You know what I'm saying? So
Unbelievable.
individuals who put themselves in this position, somebody has to put yourself in that position. If this is the way God wanted me to leave, he'd allowed me to die when that car hit me. And he didn't. So it is what it is, you know. But I just wanted to be shown that that's the type steps that they will actually take to make you be quiet.
Right. That's amazing.
It is.
I wanted to go to the chat, and I know Ed and Amazing Ant probably have questions, but I wanted to go to our live interactive audience because everyone's been patiently waiting to ask the questions.
Yes.
Just put hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon, hashtag Ant, hashtag, let's make it easy, Rick, R-I-C. Is that okay?
Or Rico. Everybody calls me Rico. Ricardo.
Hashtag Rico. I like it. R-I-C-O. Hashtag Rico, hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon with your questions. I will highlight them. And I talked to Ricardo about this, Rico, and he said, yeah, let's do it. So he wants people to ask questions as it pertains to his experience as a New York State inmate at, that Marcy hub. He was there right across the street from Marcy Correctional at Midstate. These facilities were interchangeable. We talked about corrections officers being borrowed, as we would call it, Ant. We would be flown to other precincts, right?
Yeah, flying.
They will fly their employees as they need them. If somebody calls in sick and they're down a couple of COs and they're up in one facility, they'll interchange them. So many of these corrections officers, and my question to you is, did you ever run into these 18 scumbags that killed Robert Brooks ever during your time?
The thing is, most of the people who I was involved with was at Midstate. So I'm familiar with the executive team. I'm familiar with the usual officers. That prison was so close to us. Like I said, you could walk across the street and you would be at Marcy. Every time they had some violent event, you could hear the horns going off. It was that close. On the day of my assault, every last one of them took their name tags off. So it's hard to say whether they were actually from across the street. There were too many officers that we never saw before. So that's why we had to assume that they must have come from across the street. It was a joint effort, for them to get on the school bus. But it's that easy in that hub for officers to come from one facility to the next one.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to address this comment from JJ. She said, it's amazing that I came across this live stream. My son was at this facility, Marcy, during the murder by these officers. I would really like to speak to one of you about things that I can't share on this thread. JJ, again, you can always contact Ed, myself, any of our guests through DutyRon.com. And if one of the mods could put that link in the chat, you could just go to it. It's in the description of this video. So you could go to DutyRon.com and you could send me a private message on there. and I'll be more than happy to get in touch with you. And coincidentally, so many of so many folks, just like JJ here, have reached out to me and have talked to me about their loved ones and the atrocities that were committed against them or that are being committed against them. We provided you with an inmate phone call just the week after Robert Brooks was murdered, and he talked about seeing a correction officer in Marcy. He's in Marcy, seeing a correction officer take somebody and body slam them right outside the showers just a week later. So it's business as usual. And it just blows my mind that, and I uploaded that audio of that inmate. It's on my playlist. You can listen to it. But the audacity of these correction officers to still be and they know these spots. Ricardo, you could talk about this. They know where the cameras aren't visible, like in the infirmary for HIPAA reasons, inside the showers, inside the bathrooms. And I would imagine that they pick and choose the places where they commit these crimes. Correct?
Both Marcy and Midstate, if you look at them, they look like old college facilities. They don't even really look like prisons as opposed to something like Attica. They look like old school condominiums. So with the age of these buildings, these guys will take you all the way around the back of a building where there is never a camera. I've never seen these guys move like that around cameras, but there are so many available places that they could take you in your life in a facility that you wouldn't even believe it. Basements, attics. People get beat up in vans on the way to the infirmary because the only reason why you go into the infirmary is because you're going to need it by the time we get there. Yeah. So by the time they get beat up, the last stop is always the infirmary. You can hear individuals screaming in the vans on the way to the infirmary getting beat up. So but the most amazing thing is once they're behind that gated fence, there is no fear to do anything. Like, who's going to stop them?
That's a shame.
I saw a comment, if I could. I just saw one of your viewers ask me specifically, basically, is it the mindset of everyone or are these just monsters? And I think it's important to point out that over 80% of the officers who I've engaged with in 10 years are not monsters. These are regular people that applied for a job at New York State. They do that job in New York State and they go home. They actually try to not get so personal because they have a lot of empathy for people that are in prison. So I think it's a huge mistake that these officers that did that to Mr. Brooks are now reflecting amongst everybody. That's not everybody. Everybody black is not a criminal. Everybody black doesn't sell crack. Everybody black doesn't break in people's houses. So to extend that stereotype unfairly, I think that's unjust. There's a lot of officers who simply are not down with that. And that's the reason why these beat up squads are squads. Squads are a limited amount of people. If it was a beat up facility, everybody would be doing it. But they have to recruit certain squads because those are only individuals who have a complete disregard to engage in it. There's COs that I've helped do their taxes. I've helped them give them law information. When female employees was getting assaulted coming from one dorm to the next, I had to file complaints on behalf of them. So
yeah,
not all officers are like that. And as a side note, a lot of viewers have you guys heard of the New York State Shock Program?
I've heard of it, the Shock Program.
The New York State Shock Program is kind of an alternative to incarceration where they can go home early. It's supposed to be military based. But these assaults happen even in the prestigious shock programs. So like I said, you never know where these things are happening at.
Yeah. I'm trying to look for some of the questions. Hold on. # Rico, no questions. Just want to say you're here for a reason. Lord bless you and may his hand protect you. That's from Princess Mitch, one of our moderators and a great friend in Arizona.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Ron, we have something from Supreme Rivera. It
Okay.
said early on, about 5 minutes ago, Ron, let me join and give the people a view of all the abuse I saw the entire 15 years I served in New York State. I was released in 2007 and never returned back. I saw them paralyze a friend of mine with sad tears.
Send me a message on DutyRon.com. I'd be happy to have you to join us on a live stream. True Patriot's been around for a while, says # Ron. I was both at Marcy and Midstate. Same culture. Officers and medical staff are the worst. Again,
one of the policies, sir, is when you saw that video of Mr. Brooks being in the nurse's office,
In the infirmary.
normally, yeah, in the infirmary, normally the officers are not even allowed to come in there with the inmate and the nurse.
Exactly.
You know, they will supervise from the window to make sure that that female nurse is not in danger. But most times, the officer is not even allowed to come in there, because if he's coming in there to complain to the nurse about physical assault, how's he going to do that with 3 officers standing right behind him? So a lot of times they will put themselves in that room, not only to make the inmate scared, but now the nurse is now not going to fulfill her job because she's worried about them. So the guy has a broken elbow and they say, oh, it's nothing but a sprain. So she says, oh, it's just a light sprain. And she writes that as a matter of record, and that's false. But she's not concerned about him. She's concerned about the officers. So those officers had no business even being in that area. And the medical person is standing at the door watching, like, at what point are you do anything about your job? He's sitting there observing, but he's not in a position to intervene. He's going to be held responsible for not intervening, but that's just how the culture and the power and the influence of these individuals are.
Lisa Love says something that many people say. She says they need undercover inmates in that prison ASAP. And that's something that should be instituted statewide, like we used to have internal
like
affairs.
UCs. Yeah. Oh, and the NYPD does that, right?
Yeah, NYPD, they do integrity tests. They test you to see if you steal. They test you to see if you commit any type of crimes. So they should be doing that. That should be something on the to-do list to help, make sure that this is more of a safer place. It just seems like a very dangerous place to be. And Ricardo, you said it well. You've spent many sleepless nights in your cell wondering when it was going to be your your time. When is someone going to come busting into your cell and assault you or sexually assault you? So
I will tell you.
Sorry, Ricardo, go for it.
Real quick, I will tell you this, and this is a matter of fact. Officers inside prisons are afraid because OS5 actually does put undercover individuals at prisons, pose at inmates. Their disciplinary record would show that they have a disciplinary record. They have court records attached, but there are times when officers don't even know if an inmate is an inmate or if he is in fact an undercover plan. Charges have been brought against officers as a result of them having those type of individuals. So it's a remarkable thing that lady mentioned that, because that does exist.
They need to do more of it because they're sucking at it. Ed, go ahead.
Right. You're right.
No, it's just mind-boggling. All of this is quite the education for me. Thank you, Ricardo.
Yeah, and I explained to you, Ricardo, that this is not our specialty. We don't know about. We're not lawyers. We're not correction officers. So for us, like, as much as some people listening and watching, this is all news to us, because we don't have an inside look. And when I was on the trip team, and an amazing aunt worked with me, and she used to give me some of the assignments that I would go on for my pickups in state prisons, throughout the New York region, upstate, and so forth. I would never make it past intake to get my takeout. When the person was done with his sentence and he had New York City charges, we would come and get them. But what I told you is that the overwhelming majority of the men and women that we picked up, but predominantly it was men, they would say, get me the hell out of here fast, hit the gas, don't look back. And could we stop the rest areas and get a McDonald's cheeseburger? Because I haven't had one of those in a long time. But they would say that I would rather be in Rikers Island than be out here in one of these state facilities. Because one of the things that really freaked me out is when I first started doing this with the pickups, when I first went to my very first, and I think it was Fishkill, was the first place I went to, the guy said to me, the correctional officer said to me, "You here for convict so-and-so?" They didn't call them inmates. They call them convicts. And I was like, I'm here to pick up, and I said his name. And he goes, "Oh, convict so-and-so." And he wouldn't say anything but convict. I wanted to talk to you about that, Ricardo, because I see you smiling a little bit. Is that how state correctional officers refer to the inmates, as convict?
During the course of my trial, the judge had to continuously admonish the officers who were on the stand to stop calling us convicts. Like on the record, he threatened to hold one officer in contempt of court because he continued to say convict as opposed to incarcerated person. Because an incarcerated person is a person that is just that, he's incarcerated. A convict is a person that has been convicted of a crime. Imagine how many people in society are criminals, but they just haven't been convicted. So what's the difference? So let's
are they saying maybe, and I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here, are they maybe making that reference because most, I would say everyone that goes to the state, upstate, has been convicted of a crime and sentenced? No,
it's not about identifying them because they've been convicted. It's a word that's used to demean a person. Calling them a convict is used to demean their mentality, because if I believe that I'm a convict, then for 10 years, I'm not going to do anything to rehabilitate myself because I'm just a convict and I'm always going to be a convict. So that's a way for them to continuously try to push your neck down while you're in there as a convict.
Yeah,
I
was taken back by it because I had never heard the term. So when I went up for the first time, I never heard a correction, because I'm dealing a lot with the local city, New York City corrections, and they call them inmates. They don't call them convicts. So when I made my first trip up, I was like, what's this? Okay, I guess this is how they do it. So
that is a derogatory term to demean an individual. There is not a judge that exists in the state of New York that has sentenced an individual to go to prison to get sodomized or to go to prison to get murdered. Mr. Brooks, judge, wherever he got sentenced at, did not sentence him to getting murdered at Marcy.
Yeah.
We are sentenced for the specific acts that we did, which violated the law, and we're paying that off by being in prison. Right. No individual has the right to attack another layer of their own punishment. You're not a judge. You're a worker.
Yeah.
You know, you work at a commercial plantation, and your job is to oversee pieces of property. Okay. Yeah. If you give me your Airbnb or Ed gives me his car and I bring it back completely damaged, I got to answer for that.
You're going to be hearing from Ed Wallace if you bring back the car.
Yes. Yeah. So our inmate is looked at as a piece of property, and when he returns home to his family, he can't be damaged. He can't be murdered. He can't be killed. And one important point that the public doesn't realize is that every week New York State releases incarcerated people back to the community. What are you getting back into your community if that person had to go through that type of abuse? Can you imagine what type of person is coming back to the community?
Yeah.
He might reoffend because of the abuse that he had in jail, because he can't take that anger out on the officers. Who is he going to take it out on? If he chooses to do that, somebody in the community. So basically
somebody said that in the chat. Actually,
it's a very important point. The state of New York has created a team of monsters that they can't control. The only thing they can do is pay your family off. People don't want money. They want their loved ones. The Brooks family doesn't really want money. They want Mr. Brooks back.
Right.
And that is a very serious issue.
Constance Barrett says, you know what would be a good thing to have on an officer in a prison system that's not part of the beatdown squad, so they can tell their side of this issue. Hashtag Rico, hashtag Ron, hashtag Ed. The problem, Constance, is that an active correction officer wouldn't come on. You saw what happened when, I want to bring up a Long Island audit again. Sean went to Marcy Correctional. We played that little clip, and Ricardo pointed out a really good thing to me today, and I'm so glad that Constance brought up this comment, is when Long Island Audit, Sean went with his video camera to ask questions as an independent journalist, he said to the correction sergeant, and that sergeant didn't have his name tag on.
No.
He had to put his name tag on as he came out. Correct me if I'm wrong. Those name tags are supposed to be affixed to their outermost garment at all times. And then, Ricardo, when Sean asked him what his shield number was, he didn't even fucking know it.
Okay, but let me interject this point. You guys worked on the streets, okay? In my limited knowledge, every patrol officer who does a stop has to fill out a report, and he has to put his badge number on it. So he knows his badge number. It becomes a thing of memory because he knows that he can say it all the time. These guys never have to tell you what their badge number is, because they would smack the shit out of you if you ask them anything personal anyway. The laws of New York State prohibit that type of communication between inmate and officer. So I would never ask an officer what his badge number is, but that officer didn't even know his own badge number to the point that he had to go outside and show it in that manner. It made him look foolish. It made him look irresponsible. And you're a sergeant. Why is your name tag not the first thing on your chest before you leave your house?
Right.
Like, why would you let the video see you actually putting it on to reaffirm that you're used to not wearing it anyway?
It's very odd that he didn't know the shield number. That freaked me out because this guy had time on the job. He didn't look like a brand new rookie. He's a sergeant, and he didn't even know what his shield number is. That's like tattooed in my mind. You're like, right? Amazing.
When he does a disciplinary report, his shield number doesn't even go on it. There's no reason for him to even have to make reference to his shield number because, I mean, who cares?
Well, amazing. What have you thought?
I'm speaking as a sergeant. I really think that he was just playing dumb because they know that they're under investigation. All eyes are on them. And I think that they really didn't have an answer because the levels of corruption start very small. Ricardo, when you and I first started talking, we talked about the touching the hands and consent. It starts small and it leads to bigger things. It appears to me as a supervisor, as a sergeant, and this is when I get embarrassed to even admit I'm a sergeant, it appears to me that they're so complacent and it's one big Pizza Hut, pizza party, and frat house that they're not expecting anyone but I guess the big supervisor to come, which you can see on camera. And they thought this reporter, Sean, was just a doo-doo-doo or nobody that they can toss around. And I say that loosely. So I think he knew it. I think that he was not cooperative. I think I know he knew it because we know our ID numbers. Ed and Ron, you guys know it. Our badge numbers, we often play in lotto or use it as a code for something because you get that and it's a prized possession to have your ID number and the badge. So I think that he was evading, which, by the way, they're not supposed to do. It falls into misconduct. So all around, I think it was all a lie. I think they're complacent to not have their name badge, to not be squared away. And that's how corruption starts. It starts small. It starts with not being presentable, whether it's physical appearance, then emotional.
Let's play this so everybody could see this, and then we'll wrap it up because we're past the hour now. This is Sean from Long Island Audit. He went to Marcy Correctional January 3rd, 2025. And he just wanted to ask some questions. Yes, he pushes the envelope, but he's respectful here. He says, "Sir, thank you." He gives his name. I'm just working on a story. But let's watch this because this is where Sean asks the sergeant for his name and his shield number. And the response to this, you could see he was like a fish out of water. Nobody's ever challenged this guy and asked him for that type of credentials. And it was like you pointed out, Ricardo, that the guy was affixing his. So watch through this window here. I'll go full screen. Watch through the window and watch as the guy is affixing his name tag. Why is he inside a New York State correctional facility without a name tag on? That that smells fishy.
People's constitutional rights. That kills people. Is that what you do? Do you want to answer any questions?
Watch here, right here where my.
Excuse me. Yeah.
This guy right here.
I am allowed. It's my First Amendment right.
He's putting
I'm putting it on now.
Yep.
Do you want to answer any questions? Excuse me. Yeah. I am allowed. It's my First Amendment right.
And he puts on the body cam footage. Look, he's still affixing it right there.
Yes.
Sir, what's your name and badge number? What's your name and badge number?
Immediately, 2 times. What's your name and badge number? Looks like he is completely stumbled here.
Lying.
Sergeant Gentile. Okay.
Is your body camera on?
My body camera's on.
Oh, because there was a lot of officers when they beat Robert Brooks.
4382.
Ed,
you mean to tell me it was impossible for him to memorize 4 digits his entire career? Yes, come on.
That was fucking loud.
Come on, man. He knew it.
And that body cam is supposed to be turned on beginning of your shift, not when you come out the door. So I mean, like I said, it's not shocking to me, but these are things that I think your viewers should see because they don't get to see this type stuff.
you know.
Let's play a little more of this. Let's play a little more of this because he asks them, do you denounce the murder of Robert Brooks? And watch how they just completely ignore him.
When they beat Robert Brooks, they didn't have their body cameras on, did they?
Ask you to leave.
This is a publicly accessible area.
New York State.
This is a publicly accessible area, sir.
Is you're not allowed to.
What happened?
On family.
What happened to Robert Brooks? Did that happen to a lot of inmates here, sir?
Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you.
I have business here. You can call the state police.
Hey, Ricardo, is that standard for inmates to be outside shoveling snow? Is that like a work detail?
Inmates get what's called outside clearance, which gives them the right to go. I had it myself, which gives them the right to go out to the parking lot, other buildings. Some of them even go on work crews. So the person you're seeing, he's actually on an outside work crew doing the snow. That's the reason why he's not immediately supervised. Know that they have, but they have cameras on him. Someone's watching him from the tower, whatever. He's being supervised. They're not going to just leave him out there. But it does appear that he's just out there. But that's not how it is. No.
Yeah, because when he first walks up, he says to the guy, "Watch out! They kill people here." He said that to the inmate, and he didn't even say anything to him.
Because the inmate know he was telling the truth, but God forbid I should say anything. I might be next. You know, in the presence of truth, sometimes you have to just be quiet and accept the truth and quietly agree. You know, that inmate knows exactly what goes on there. So that wasn't an opportune time for him to be able to say something. If he would have been there by himself without the officer present, I guarantee you he would have voiced his opinion.
All right. This is we can't do this just in one live stream. Will you promise to come back and do more with us?
Absolutely. And one last thing. I don't know if the viewer saw the rest of the video. Do you notice how every state trooper came up and stated their badge number? And when they were specifically asked how they felt, do they condone it? They specifically said, no, we don't. I don't condone that. It's human to say that you don't condone it. Why would you not say whether you condone it or not? To say nothing is like, that's crazy.
Yeah, let's play that.
How are you? I'm doing well, sir. A little chilly out, but doing well. Man, you mind if I get your name and badge number, sir?
Absolutely. It's Triple Lawrence.
He said absolutely.
Hi, Troop.
Absolutely.
22387. And then there's another part in this where the sergeant comes up, and this guy was actually pretty respectful to him as well. I thought that all the troopers, with the exception of one sergeant, were very respectful to him.
And paraded and shown to be the scum that they are, the despicable, murderous scum that they are. Hi, ma'am. Hi. You mind if I just get your name and badge number so I know who's here?
Sure. Trooper Hartman, 1284.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Stay safe. Hey, how you guys doing today? You mind if I get your name and badge number, sir?
It's Sergeant Nick Leone, Shield 918.
Thank you. My name is Sean, sir. I'm an independent journalist. Yeah, I'm asking some questions about Robert Brooks' incident that happened here a couple days ago.
Okay.
I'm not going to restricted areas or anything.
Okay.
I just want to let you know.
Okay.
You're not gonna have any issues with me, sir. You know,
Okay.
I'm just asking questions.
Sean?
Yeah, Sean. Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Where are you from?
I'm from Long Island, sir. From Long Island. Yeah. I'm an independent journalist. That's fine. Yeah. So, you don't have probable cause to arrest those officers, the 14 officers that were engaged in that?
I can't comment on that investigation.
All right. I mean, you saw the video, right?
Yes, I did see the video.
You saw the video. Do you condemn that kind of behavior?
I can't comment.
You can't say you condemn that kind of behavior. The governor condemned it.
I understand that, and I agree. I don't condone that, but I.
All right, so right there he said, "Don't condone it."
That's it.
Yes. But at least he acknowledged that I don't condone that, and that's the same thing. I condemn it. Look, the bottom line here is we got a taste of the tone of Marcy correctional officers by Sean making that visit, and that was January 3rd, 2025, right after the first of the year. It took him 5 hours. He admits he drove upstate 5 hours to do that. But you get an idea, for those of you who are watching this, the tone of the correctional staff there. Nobody wanted to talk to him, and I get it. They're probably restricted into what they can say, but saying one word like "I do not condone murder," it's a simple thing. Ed, I don't know. Any thoughts on this, Ed?
It has nothing to do with your job. You're asking me as a human being, do I condone something? I'm going to speak up on that. That's very important.
Yeah.
And the biggest, saddest thing to me, you guys, is somebody got beat up today. Somebody got beat up yesterday. Somebody's going to get beat up tomorrow. The only reason why this thing is a thing is because luckily there was video camera, but this is something that goes on every single day.
Right.
And I really hope that the public has a way to actually, because the public is the person who has the power. The public has the power to get the attention and make changes. So I just hope that all of these issues can get addressed and not swept on the rug, because there's so many incidents that we don't know about, you know?
Yeah.
I 100% there, Ricardo, because, all prosecutions and all incarcerations are done in the name of the people state of New York here in New York, right?
Right.
It's the people state of New York versus Ricardo Moore. It's the people
Right.
state of New York that, well, once you're convicted, the judge will give you the sentence, but it's done in the
Right.
name of the people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to acknowledge our super chatters and our live chatters. So I'm going to highlight real quick as we talk. Barbara Ann Breen, Mod Squad, thank you for the $10 super chat. She says, thank you for bringing attention to this. Love and prayers. Hey, love and respect right back to you. Thank you. Jeff, thank you for being a member for 21 months. He said, this is barbaric. I cannot imagine, he's from Wyoming, what this family is feeling, the Brooks family. I can barely put a sentence together. Physical and sexual abuse. My God. Yeah, I mean, Jeff, we're with you, and it is horrific. Jeff again sends a super chat. That was God Almighty defending you. He still is watching over you. That was with the car when we played the video, you getting hit with the car.
I definitely believe that.
Yeah. And thank you for the support. Your nosy neighbor became a YouTube member. Thank you for being a member. Michael Joseph Murray, member for 15 months. Thank you for the support. Sharon Creates, that's our crochet crew in their prayer squad. Sharon Creates, a member for 29 months. She says, yes, continuing at home from the damage. Yeah, so she's got a lot of stuff going on up there. She's up north and heavy weather and a lot of battles with her health. So I hope you're doing well. Erin Abu, thank you for being a member for 2 months. She says, good evening, everyone from Seattle. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Again, leave your questions in the comment section down below. A good way to communicate with us after these live streams are over is by leaving a comment in the comment section. Hold on just 1 second, Ricardo. I'll definitely get to you. I want to thank the replay viewers and the live chatters, the moderators, and everyone who is positively engaged here. We are trying to have a intelligent, positive conversation. This is a very difficult subject to broach, but the bottom line is we need to speak about this, and we need to continue to speak about it until change is done. It's not about having this family get a paycheck from the state or the feds. It's about, in the name of Robert Brooks, getting change for the rest of, like Ricardo just said, someone's getting beat up now. Someone's got beat up this morning. Someone's getting beat up tomorrow, and so on and so forth. When is enough going to be enough? I think what we saw on the morning of December 9th, the evening of December 9th, going into the 10th, I think that was enough. And I think that this has to stop, and it has to stop now. Ricardo, I wanted to go back to you because I thought that you wanted to get out. You were having your finger up. So
yeah, no, just one last thing. I don't think anyone has the latitude to assign a dollar amount to Mr. Brooks' life. That's an impossible thing to do. So this whole thing is never about the money. The money is just the only thing that he can receive for his life. But I don't think it should ever be about the money. This is about precedence. The case that was won by me and 33 others, that is now case law that can support other cases in the future. You know, if somebody argues a case in court, they can refer back to my case in support of that. So there's more important reasons to try to fight this fight. And trust me, it's a fight, you know, and I just encourage everyone to be more strenuous and to get your knowledge up so you'll be prepared to fight that fight.
absolutely. Amen. Ed, I'm going to you for final thoughts.
Ricardo, thanks for being here. I appreciate
Absolutely.
the education you just gave me and our viewers. Viewers, thanks for being here as well. I know you have you can get your true crime fix anywhere on the internet you like, and I appreciate you sharing your time, your valuable time with Ron, myself, and Amazing Ant. And always stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
Amen to that, brother. Amazing Aunt, always good words of wisdom. I'll go to you.
Thank you. From a spiritual point of view, I posted for Martin Luther King Day a quote that he said, and I wrote before I played him, "You matter, we matter, let's together continue Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. Be kind, advocate for faith, family, and freedom." And this is what he said, to your point, Ricardo. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Then he says, always feel that you count. Says, always feel that you have worth. So when I looked at that, I said, how can I close today? Because Mr. Brooks' life, he died an awful, savage death, but in Genesis, not but, for all of us here, especially for you, Rico, Genesis 1, you are valuable because of who you are. You are made in God's image. And I think that's important for all of us in this community who's very supportive to remember that we're all created and we're all here for a reason, and we're all made in God's image. It's what we do with that and how we live our lives. And unfortunately, Mr. Brooks' life he's no longer with us, but I pray that this case, like Rico said, changes the future and for other victims going forward. Thank you, DutyRon, for bringing this to the attention. And also for those of you who want to know, who message me, I put the link for National Action Network. I am calling Al Sharpton's office tomorrow. I am sending an email, a request to find out how come they haven't been up to Marcy facility.
Yes.
Yeah. I noticed that, that as well as I watched this over the past 4 weeks or so. But again, I send strength, prayers, and positive vibes to the Brooks family. We're going to be here. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to use the platform to bring attention to this ongoing issue in the New York State Department of Corrections. And again, I have to say, there are good men and women who work behind the walls. As Ricardo said, this is not about, sending a message that all correctional officers are bad. We have cancer in that New York State Department of Corrections, and that cancer needs to be eradicated. It needs to be removed. And there needs to be change, and policies needs to be changed, procedures need to be changed, and the safety that the inmates are inmates, right? They're there, they've gotten sentenced, they did their went through the justice system, they got their sentence just like Mr. Brooks got, and it doesn't mean that you have to be murdered while you're doing your time. Your debt to society is being paid with your time, with 12 years of your life, with 10 years of your life. It doesn't mean that while you're in there, you have to be treated like a subhuman. That is inexcusable. I'm repulsed by it, and this has to stop. So again, to the Brooks family, everybody here in this community, put prayer emojis and goodwill in the chat. Let them know that we love and care for them. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, folks, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody. This is not okay. So on behalf of Ed Wallace, myself, and this whole entire community, I want to thank Ricardo Moore for taking out the time. I want to thank Amazing Aunt for being a friend and being here. This conversation will be continued, and we will continue it in the future. Ricardo, I'll give you the final word as well.
That's about it for me. Thank you guys for the exposure. I think the public needs it, and this platform is very beneficial for that purpose. So you guys are doing the right thing.
Amen. Thank you. All right, folks, stand by for a message from our cop team. That's Kara, Oscar, and Popeye, and a little bit of inside information. Kara might be getting a baby brother or sister. I think they said a sister. These Wallace people, they're a little crazy. They want to add more chaos to their household with another dog. That's coming on the horizon. I heard it today from the boss, from Ed's wife.
Congratulations.
Looks like it's happening.
All right. I'll let you know what name we determined.
All right. Good night from New York. We'll talk to you soon.
Good night. Thank you.
Have a good